back. This is part 3 of the Vengeance campaign, which is a battle between the Stone Dog Space Marines and the Screaming Suns Orcs. We're looking at the table that we're playing on today. This is a 6x4 table. We're using the deployment map Hammer and Anvil. So we've got the red dice marking 24 inches on this end and 24 inches on this end with a 24-inch gap in the middle. We're doing an Eternal War mission. This is the scouring from the main rulebook. So we've got 6 objectives on the table, numbered 1 through 6. We've got the superior objective, which is this one here. This is objective 3. That's worth 4 victory points at the end of the game. And then we've got the inferior objective, which is number 5, marked by the 5 pipes just here. This is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. All the other objectives are worth 2 points. We've got number 6 there, number 4, number 2, and number 1. Those, as I say, those are scored at the end of the game. Got some special rules that we're playing again because this is narrative. This is another narrative game for us. So because we've got a bit of an imbalance between the number of models we've got for Space Marines and Orcs, we've come up with a few special rules. We're playing Slay the Warlord, we're playing First Strike, and we're playing Line Breaker as per normal. But the Orcs, because they're under strength in terms of model numbers, have got some options that they can use. They came out with only 3 command points in terms of the Battleforged system. So to kind of get them up to speed or up to the same level as the Stone Dogs, who have 16, we've given them a D20 roll, which took them up to 19 total. They don't have any psychers. The Space Marines have 3. We'll look at the armies shortly so you can see those. So what we've said is the Orcs can use their command points for any of the following 3 options. Option 1, they can choose a stratagem. So we've got the stratagem cards and some tokens here. There's 19 yellow tokens for command points and a deck of stratagem cards. So they can choose a stratagem, but they must pay the command points for that stratagem, whether it is usable or not. And that's drawn from the top of the deck. Option number 2, they can spend 2 command points and either war boss, because there are 2 war bosses in the Orc army, can cast either Smite using the normal psychic power rules, or they can roll a d6 and use a random psychic power once per turn. So we've got the cards set out here, 1 to 6. So they would roll on those 6 and choose the one that comes up. Option 3 is spend 1 command point for a command point reroll as per normal. And finally, any Space Marine units that are destroyed using one of those 3 options, we're saying that the Orcs can farm back 1 command point just to keep them in the game, because, as I say, they are under strength by quite a bit. And finally, as we've played before, any Orc units that are destroyed from turn 2 onwards get to come back onto the table on a d6 roll of a 4, 5 or 6. So that will keep things moving, keep their forces moving forwards. The Space Marines are going to be deploying at this end in the fortification and around this end of the table, just to kind of identify their secure landing point that they made after the last battle, and then the Orcs will be forming up on this end. So that's pretty much it in terms of rules and what we're doing. The armies are up next. This is 2,500 points of Space Marines. In this army we've got 2 battalions, 1 spearhead and 1 vanguard. They are all mixed in together, so I'll try and talk you through what is in each detachment. So starting at the front here, we've got a standard librarian, we've got a Terminator librarian, Captain in Gravis armour, Primaris librarian, a chaplain in Terminator armour, company ancient Primaris, and then 2 Primaris lieutenants. So the librarian in Terminator armour and the Primaris librarian, these 2 here, form the HQs for the Vanguard, and in that Vanguard we've got the Primaris Ancient with banner, We've got a Reaver squad just here, and then we've got 2 dreadnoughts. So we've got one dreadnought here with twin las cannon, and I think that's the one with a flamer, and then one with twin las cannon and heavy bolter. So that's the vanguard. And then in the 1st battalion we have a chaplain who is this guy here. He's the chaplain in the 1st battalion. Also got the librarian in there as well, this guy. And then we have the 3 5-man tactical squads over the back in their rhinos. So this one is chainsword on the sergeant and flamer, as is this one, chainsword on the sergeant and flamer, and then this one is chainsword on the sergeant and missile launcher. And then in the 2nd battalion we've got as HQs the 2 Primaris lieutenants, and then we have 2 5-man intercessor squads, standard bolt rifles, and we also have a scout squad with sniper rifles just here. Okay, and then in the vanguard, we've done the vanguard already? I think I have. Spearhead is the other one, isn't it? Spearhead, we've got the captain in Gravis armour, and we've also got the Hellblasters, who are here, 5-man Hellblaster squad. And finally we've got 2 5-man Devastator squads. We've got the standard 25mm base Devastators here with a mixture of weapons, las cannon, heavy bolter, missile launcher, heavy plasma, multi-melter I think is in there. And then on this one we've got the 3 las cannons, 1 heavy bolter, and then a flamer and a lightning claw. I keep calling it a power claw, but it's a lightning claw on the sergeant. So that is the Space Marine Army at 2,500 points. And let's look at the orcs. Here are the orcs, the Screaming Suns Warband. Points total for this group of models is 1,181, so we're quite a way off the 2,500 points for Space Marines. Just talk you through what we've got. So 30 boy squad here. These are all 2nd edition with a big shooter and power claw on the boss. Then we've got 3 5-man knob squads. We've got a 20-man boy squad here, again big shooter and power claw on the boss. Killer can, 3 war bikes, and then over the front we've got the war boss, standard war boss. We've got the shock attack gun. We've got the pain boy, and we have Gurgal Wazkill himself, who is the warlord. As already mentioned, in terms of Battleforge, these guys came out with a total of 3 command points. So there's a Vanguard detachment in here for 1 command point, then 3 for Battleforged, but there's also an auxiliary support detachment in here which is -1, so that's a total of 3 command points. So we rolled a D20, they rolled a 19. Sorry, no they didn't, they rolled a 13, so they've ended up with 16 command points as a result, and those will be used as described earlier, and we'll talk through that as we're playing. Additionally, from turn 2 onwards, returning to the field on a roll of 4, 5 or 6 on a D6, just to represent additional reinforcements coming in from elsewhere on the planet. So that's the orcs. Let's go and look at deployment. So we are deployment all complete. Space Marine wise, we've got 2 rhinos with 5-man squads inside, 2 squads of intercessors with the Primaris Ancient, a squad of Devastators on this level over the superior objective. We've got Chaplain and Primaris Psyker, the librarian, just here. Except that's the captain in Gravis armour, and one of the dreadnoughts with the 3rd rhino, and then Devastators, Hellblasters, Primaris Psyker over the far side there with a librarian on the very left, sorry, a dreadnought on the very left hand flank. The snipers have advanced deployed onto the corner of this building. In Deep Strike, we've got Chaplain, Terminator, Librarian Terminator, Reavers on their grav shoots, and the squad of Terminators with their homing beacon. These three are the 3 5-man squads that are in the Rhinos. Let's have a look at the Orcs deployment. Everything on the table for the Orcs. So Killer Can on the left flank, and then 30-man squad of boys. Warboss with Painboy, and then the 20-man squad of boys with Gazgul, Gazgul. I always get confused. It's Gurgal, it's not Gazgul. 3 Warbikes, and then over on the flank you've got 5-men Nob squads times 3, and then just hiding behind this tree is the shock attack gun. So that's deployment complete. Orcs get first turn unless Space Marines can seize on A6, which they do not, which is quite handy because snipers. So it's Orcs first turn. Right, so first turn movement for the Orcs is now complete. Killer Can has moved forwards on the left. Everything in the middle here has just moved too far away to get into combat on the first turn, so just playing it safe currently. Apart from the Warbikes have advanced to get into range of these units in the centre, and then the Nobs on this side have just moved forwards as well. So that's it for the movement phase. Psychic phase, we're not going to use any command points this turn because we're not in range. 18 inches is the kind of the standard range for the Orc psychic powers, and we're currently at about 20, so not close enough as yet. The only unit that hasn't moved is the shock attack gun just over the back here. So no stratagems, no psychic powers. So now moving into the shooting phase for the Orcs. Alright, so that's the end of the shooting phase for the Orcs. The rocket launcher from the Killer Can totally missed with a command point reroll, missed again. That was aiming at the Rhino on the end here. The 2 Dakka guns in these 2 squads, one missed and the other managed to take out one of the intercessors. The Dakka guns on the Warbikes missed completely, so no damage from them. And finally the shock attack gun, strength 6, rolled for 4 shots, 1 hit but no wounds, so very little effectiveness from the Orcs in this turn. So moving into the charge phase, we're going to just roll for the charge for the Warbikes, and we'll come right back. So we needed a 9 and we rolled an 8. So we're going to do a command point reroll on that one. Okay, so that's 2 command points down for the Orcs. No charge, no fight, and therefore no morale. So that's the end of the Orc turn. I'm going to move into Space Marines next. Movement for the Space Marines now complete. So Dreadnought and Librarian have moved forwards on this side to face into the Nobs. The heavies have stayed where they are, obviously not wanting to compromise their 2-hit roll. Got a bit of movement forward in the centre here to take on the Warbikes, and then the intercessors and the lieutenants plus the 2 Rhinos have moved forward over this side, but we've got heavies over the back here again which haven't moved, so we're going to look at those in the shooting phase and see what we can do. But it's psychic phase next, so we're looking at currently this Librarian, and let's see what we can do. So psychic phase for the Space Marines is over. So the Primaris Librarian cast Smite, which goes off on a 5 but went off on a 7 onto these knobs and took one boy out for 2 mortal wounds. Sorry, one knob out for 2 mortal wounds. Then cast Smite again, going off on a 6 but actually went off on a 9 for D3 mortal wounds, causing 3 mortal wounds on the Warbike squad. So we've lost 1 from this squad, and then the other one is down to 1 wound. So we've got 3 wounds on the boss, and then 1 wound left on the standard Warbiker, making these guys' jobs a little bit easier, hopefully. So that's it for Psychic, and we're now moving into the shooting phase for Space Marines. Relatively successful shooting phase for the Space Marines. Managed to take out the Killer Can with the Hunter Killer missile on the Rhino at this end. A couple of boys gone from this squad. A boy gone from this squad through fire from the snipers through a window at -1 to hit. These guys here were taken out by this Rhino. The intercessors managed to get the Warbike squad down to 1 wound remaining, and then the Dreadnought took out the last wound. We had a few successful shots from the heavy weapons at the back here into this squad as well, so a total of 5 boys gone from this unit. And then over on this side we've got 1 full knob squad remaining, and then the 2 bosses left in the other units. First strike to Space Marines for the Warbikes, so 1 victory point up. Everything else was pretty much shot. The Rhino missed its target, it was aiming at the Warbikes. The Captain in Gravis armour missed with the Boltstorm Gauntlet, and the Chaplain has no ranged weapons. So that's it for shooting. We're now looking at charges, which are a little bit limited. I don't think there are any. We'll check that, and then we'll come back to you in a moment. Yeah, so nothing in charge range now for Space Marines now that the Warbikes have gone. And again, no morale. So no fighting, obviously. So that's it for the end of Space Marines turn 1. So we're moving into Orcs turn 2. Right, that's Orcs movement complete. So these boys have moved forwards with their war boss and the associated pain boy. And then these boys have also moved forwards. A little bit of a struggle moving movement trays in such dense terrain, so we've had to be a little bit judicious about what we do to represent where they've moved to. But that's one of the downsides about these movement trays. So might have to think about a different alternative method for moving at some point. And then over this side, the knobs have moved forward, just standard move, just to get into shooting range of the Space Marine units on this side. We're just going to roll for units coming back on for the Orcs. So this is for the Killer Can. Oh, that's cocked. Killer Can. Right, Killer Can's coming back on. Warbikes are coming back on. So both units that were destroyed in turn 1 are coming back onto the table. So we'll put those out and then come back to you. Right, so Warbikes and Killer Can back on the table. Elected to drop them in on this flank, right on the edge of Orc deployment, so that they're within range of the Space Marine units and supporting the knobs on this side, because there's been a lot of damage over here. So the aim of this is to use the rocket launcher and then the Dakka guns on the bikes to try and get some wounds off of the heavy weapons on this side, because this is quite a strong flank for the Space Marines. So that's it for Orc movement. We're going to look at Orc Psychic now, remembering that we can use some command points to roll for Psychic powers. So we're going to do that next, and then we'll come back to you. So both war bosses elected to cast Smite. This war boss got the power off on an 8. And is out of range of any psychers, so managed to take out 1 intercessor, and then Gurgal himself spent another 2 command points and managed to take out a 2nd intercessor with Smite, because again there's no friendly Space Marine psyker within range to deny. So relatively successful, 4 command points down. Now moving into shooting for the orcs. So that's orc shooting complete. The orcs have done what they usually do, and because of their BS of 5 have managed to miss quite a lot. Got the Primaris Ancient down to 3 wounds here, but no other damage across the table. The knobs on this side did no damage. All they could shoot at was the Dreadnought. Rocket launcher missed, shock attack gun missed. That was on a strength 10 as well, so that could have done quite a lot of damage if it had actually hit its target. So we're now looking at any potential charges, which, yeah, possibly. We'll do a little bit of measuring and then decide what we're going to do. Okay, so the war boss is going to attempt to charge into the rhino. Needs to roll 6 or higher, but the rhino is obviously going to fire Overwatch. So 4 shots from the rapid fire weapon on the rhino needs 6s. So we get 1 hit, and that is a strength 4, toughness 5. So it's a 5 to cause a wound, but no wounds. So need a 6 or higher, and we get a 5. Now, Warboss can re-roll failed charge rolls. That's using the here we go rule. So I can roll either one or both of those. And I think I'm going to re-roll both, looking for 6. So there you go, that's a successful charge for the Warboss. Now that the war boss is in, I'm going to roll for a charge for this knob squad. Boy squad. They need a 7 or higher, and they're not going to get it. So we're going to re-roll that. Here we go, and they get a 6. So unfortunately, that is a failed charge. Just going to double check that distance, but I'm pretty sure that's not enough. Well, they can get to within an inch of the war boss, but not within an inch of the rhino, unfortunately. So I would say that's a failed charge. Okay, moving on. So just so that you know, this is wobbly model syndrome. So actually these boys and the war boss are supposed to be down on the ground floor. So we're going to charge into the intercessors. Intercessors are going to fire Overwatch at the war boss. So that's 10 shots because they're within half range, and that hits on 6s obviously for Overwatch. And we've got 1 hit, strength 4, toughness 5. So that is 1 wound, and then the war boss gets their standard save, which they fail. My apologies, that's actually a pass. Forgetting that Gurgal has the same profile as Ghazghkull Thraka, so 2+ save for him, so he saved that shot. So now looking at the charge, we need a 7 or more. And we get a 9, so that is a successful charge. So he is in, and then we're going to roll against the same unit for the boys. And we get an 8, and I'm pretty sure that that's okay. Well, actually, yeah, that's fine. So we can at least get the boss and the front rank into that unit. So that's all good. Okay, so the only other units that potentially we could charge are these knobs. However, they would need an 8. So a bit risky going up against las cannon fire for Overwatch. So we're going to leave that for this turn. They've also got to get over this barricade, so that's going to add at least an inch. So that makes them needing a 9 actually. So we're going to leave that for this turn and wait until next turn to see where we are. we've also got to think about these guys in the next turn as well. So that is the end of charges for the orcs. So we're now looking at the fight phase. Okay, so that's the end of the fight phase for the orcs. Quite successful. Gurgal has managed to smash down 3 of the intercessors all on his own. The boys took out 1 more, so that just leaves the sergeant in this squad. This war boss and the rhino have not damaged each other at all, so no wounds scored in this combat. So that's the end of the fight phase. So in terms of morale, there's nothing really. The orcs have lost 2 further boys from this squad, so no chance of them failing really, and no further losses. So we're looking at Space Marines turn 2. Right, so this is the end of Space Marines movement. We've got a tac squad deployed from this rhino and a tac squad deployed from this rhino. Flamer forward on this one, as in range of this boy squad. Intercessors and Chapter Ancient and the 2 lieutenants have moved to within engagement range of these combats, as have these units in the centre. We've also got on the table now deployed from high orbit the Librarian and the Terminator squad, and a squad of Reavers who are just over at the rear here, looking to either go for the objective or go for the shock attack gun in the next turn. And finally, Rhino's moved up the centre, and Dreadnought and Librarian have moved forwards on this flank. There is 1 more unit, which is the Terminator Chaplain, and he's deployed just behind this wall. He's quite a beast in hand-to-hand combat, but pretty ineffective at range, so we're looking to get him in to these units as soon as possible. So that's it for movement. Going to move into Psychic now for the Space Marines. Right, so that's the end of the Psychic phase. Librarian cast Smite on the Pain Boy, managed to take off 1 mortal wound, then attempted Fury of the Ancients on this unit of boys, rolled 11 inches, which was 1 inch short, did a command point reroll, and still got 11 inches, so that power failed at the cost of 1 command point. And then over on this side, the Librarian attempted Smite and failed the first roll, and then got it off on the second roll of 1 8, and took out the last knob in the squad on the left. So that's potentially a squad that's coming back next turn. So that's it for Psychic. Now moving into the shooting phase for Space Marines. So at the end of the shooting phase for the Space Marines, dealt out an enormous amount of damage on the orcs. So everything that was in this area, which was the largely complete boys squad and the Pain Boy, has been wiped out through combined fire from this Rhino, these 2 tac squads, these Primaris Marines, and the Librarian and the Terminators. So nothing left in the centre there. And then over this side, the knobs are down to 3 individuals remaining. So really powerful round for the Space Marines for shooting. In terms of what the orcs have got to come on next turn, however, they've got a 30-man boy squad, a 5-man knob squad, and a Pain Boy, which potentially may come back on next turn. So still more forces awaiting the charge onto the battlefield. But really impressed with the Devastators so far. They dealt out an enormous amount of damage this round, so really good. Okay, so that's it for shooting. So we're now looking at the charge phase for Space Marines, and we'll come right back. Charge phase for Space Marines now complete. Excuse this guy stood on the roof of the Rhino, but there is nowhere to put him currently. So we've just got to sort out what we're doing with this tack unit here. These are going to charge into the war boss as well, but we've charged and consolidated in around this boy squad and the Gurgal. The Primaris Ancient has charged in, as has this lieutenant. This squad here is just about to charge in as well, so just going to roll for it anyway just to make sure. Double 6, so they're definitely in. Warboss can't fire Overwatch because he's already engaged in combat with the Rhino. So that's it for charges. We're not charging anything on the far flank. We're going to leave those two units, the Dreadnought and the Librarian, where they are currently. So moving into the fight phase for Space Marines. Fight phase is now finished for the Space Marines. As you can see, the war boss here has managed to annihilate the tactical squad. Lieutenant and Primaris Ancient have consolidated, or piled in I should say, to continue that combat. In the middle here we've lost another couple of intercessors. However, the Dreadnought has taken 9 boys out in one round of combat there, and Gurgal is down to 6 wounds from 8. That's it for the combat. That's probably the kind of the best combat phase I think I've had against orcs for a long time. So end of the turn, we're just going to roll for morale for the 2 Primaris units. So bearing in mind we've lost 2 from one and 1 from the other. So that's the first one passed, and that's the second one passed, so no problem at all for those 2. So yeah, no, moving into turn number 3 for the orcs. So first of all, we're going to roll to see if we've got any units coming back on. So firstly 5 knobs, they're not coming back on. Then 30 boys are coming back on, and finally the pain boy is coming back on. So we've got 30 knobs and a pain boy coming back onto the field. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, however, to get them into the deployment zone more than 9 inches, or 9 inches away from an enemy, because we've got Terminators here and Reavers here right on the back edge of the board, so that may prevent us from deploying. We'll have a look and come back to you. Right, so we can get the orcs on the table. This line of red dice dictates the area in which we can deploy, which is more than 9 inches away from any enemy unit. So it's given us a bit of a narrow corridor. So basically 9 inches from the Rhino to here, 9 inches from the Librarian here, all the way around this line to here, 9 inches away from the Terminators to here. So it gives us this narrow strip running across to here, and then 9 inches from the Reavers all the way up to here and across to the edge. So there's like this kind of weird shaped dogleg section that I can deploy into with the orcs. So I'm going to do that now and then come back to you. Okay, so there we are. Orcs all out in a big long 2-deep snake around the edge of this zone, just within 12 inches shooting range of these Terminators and the Librarian, and then the 5-man Knob Squad just here facing into the Reavers. The Pain Boy is just on the back of this unit, just to give them a bit of a health boost. So there we go. So that's the unit's back on. So we're going to move into movement now for the orcs. Movement now complete for the orcs. So the boys have moved up into a more suitable gunline position, with a view to potentially charging into the backs of the Terminators, possibly maybe a multi-charge, we'll see, but I think probably we're just going to go into the back of the Terminators there. And the knobs on this side have moved forwards towards the Reavers to try and tie them up and prevent them from targeting the shock attack gun. Killer Cans moved forwards just to get better range on the heavies over the back here, and then the remaining knobs and the Warbikers, these have moved up and advanced in the case of the Warbikers to get into charge range of these two units and the chaplain. So that's the end of Orcs movement. Going to move into the psychic phase now and just see if we can get any powers off. So the war boss over here attempted to cast a random psychic power. Rolled a 6. 6 is Roar of Mork. That goes off on a warp charge value of 8. Rolled a 6 and then did a command point reroll and rolled a 6 again, so that power failed. So the War Leader Gurgal then cast a smite for a further 2 command points on the chaplain and managed to inflict 1 mortal wound. So that was 5 or possibly 6 command points gone in one fell swoop there for the Orcs. So they're not sitting on very many at all now. I think they've got 6 command points left. So that's the psychic phase over for the Orcs. So we're now moving into the shooting phase. Pretty poor shooting phase from the Orcs. 29 shots from the boy squad into the Terminators. Scored hits but no wounds due to the 2+ save. Similarly, the Dagger gun scored hits but no wounds. And then over this side, the Knobs failed to score any hits on the Reavers. Shock attack gun missed its target on a strength 6 shot. The Killer Can failed to score any hits. Dagger guns on the bikes took a wound off the Librarian, but these Knobs failed to score any damage. So that's the end of shooting. Everything else is in close combat. Just looking at charges next. Charge phase all complete. So this squad of boys have made it in. We're just looking at the barricade there and saying that actually they are in contact even though they're outside of an inch. We're going to say that for the purposes of this charge they are successful. They're in. They lost 1 to Overwatch, which is incredible considering the weight of firepower aimed against them from the Terminators. And then over here the Knobs made it in with no losses to Overwatch. And on this flank up at the top end, we've got the 3 Knobs in combat with the Librarian, and the 3 Bikers made it into the Chaplain. So no losses to Overwatch there. So that's the end of the charge phase. Fight phase is coming next. Phase for the Orcs. The Terminators have lost 1 of their number, but they've managed to really do some damage to this boy squad, taking out around 8 or 9 in 1 round of combat, so really good performance there. Over here the Knobs have managed to take out a Reaver and put 1 down to 1 wound, but they've lost 2 of their number in the process. Moving up here, 2 Knobs down and 1 on 1 wound in this fight against the Librarian, who himself has lost 2 wounds. And then the Warbikes have managed to take 2 wounds off of the Chaplain as well, so he's dropped a couple and didn't deal any damage in return. And then if we go over to the Warboss, he's on 4 wounds, taken a wound off the Primaris Ancient and 4 wounds off the Rhino. And then Gurgal has lost all of his surrounding boys and is now faced by 2 sergeants, a dreadnought and a captain in Gravis armour. So that's the end of the fight phase. Just going to look at morale quickly and then we'll move on to Space Marines turn 3. Yeah, so all the Orc units are good after morale. This unit's fallen back on mob rule because they rolled quite high for morale, but the number of models in that unit have saved them. This unit being only 5 models and losing 2, they passed. Similarly, these guys up here passed as well, so no issues there with morale for the Orcs. So moving into Space Marines turn number 3. Okay, so Space Marines movement for turn 3 is complete. Rhino on this flank has moved forwards, as have the squad of tacticals. No movement here because they're all in combat. No movement for the heavies. The Rhino in the centre has disgorged its 5-man squad and moved forwards to here, and everything else has stayed put. So that's the end of the movement phase. Now looking at the psychic phase for Space Marines. So psychic phase is over. Primaris Librarian cast Smite on the knob he was fighting and caused 1 mortal wound. Then attempted to cast Might of Heroes on the Dreadnought and failed. And then over on this side, the Librarian Terminator cast Smite on the Pain Boy, took off 2 wounds, and then cast Psychic Scourge on the unit of boys and took out 3 more boys from this squad. So that's the psychic phase over. Looking at shooting for Space Marines next. So at the end of the Space Marine shooting phase, we've taken out the killer can from this side through firepower from the Dreadnought, and then fire from the las cannons on the left hand squad, the Devastators over the back there, took out the shock attack gun that was down here. That's all the shooting. Those are the only 2 units that were out in the open, everything else is in combat. So moving into the fight phase next for Space Marines. Okay, so that's the end of the fight phase for the Space Marines. Lost a Terminator here, but taken out an extra 4 or 5 boys from this squad. They've all consolidated, or piled in, I should say. The knobs here have lost another wound, however, one of the Reavers is dead. And over in the centre here, we've managed to get a wound off of the War Boss, but in retaliation he's taken 4 off the Rhino. And then here another wound off of, 3 wounds off of Gurgal, but he did have a invuln saved, which saved him from 3 further wounds. And as a result, he's then taken out one of the Intercessor Sergeants. So that's the end of the fight phase and turn 3 for the Space Marines. So we're now moving into turn 4 for the Orcs. Completed Orcs movement. Not much moved, well, nothing moved in fact, because everything is in combat. So we've got combats going on with the war bikes, with Gurgal and with the other war boss, and then combat here with this depleted group of boys. So we rolled to see what will come back on, and quite literally the only 2 units that have come back on are the killer can and the shock attack gun. Everything else failed its return roll. So good news for the Space Marines, because that means they can use this next turn to try and get rid of these last remaining units. So that's it for the movement phase. Now moving into Psychic for the Orcs. Okay, so I expended 2 command points in the Psychic phase for Gurgal to try and cast Smite on the Gravis Captain. However, he failed the roll, and then this war boss attempted to cast Smite as well, obviously rolling on a 6 instead of a 5, rolled a 9, and did 3 mortal wounds on the Primaris Ancient, so he's now off the field. However, that leaves the Orcs with 1 command point remaining, so no opportunity to do anything other than a command point re-roll at this stage. Everything else costs 2 command points. So that's it for Psychic for the Orcs. So now moving into the shooting phase. Orc shooting phase complete. The only 2 units that are available to shoot are these 2 here. Shock attack gun on a strength 6 did 2 mortal wounds on the, 2 wounds on the Dreadnought, taking him down to 6, and then the shock attack gun, the killer cam with the rocket launcher dealt out another 3 wounds, dropping him down to 3. So 3 wounds left on that Dreadnought. That's the end of the shooting phase. So we're now looking at charges. Nothing to declare in the charge phase for the Orcs, so I'm going to move straight on to the fight phase and see where we end up. End of the fight phase for the Orcs. So Gurgal's managed to take 3 wounds off of the Dreadnought, however he's now down to 1 single wound, if you can see that just there. The other war boss has taken a wound or 2 wounds off of the Primaris Lieutenant. And then over the back here we've lost another Terminator, but also lost 2 or 3 more boys from this squad. And over here 1 Reaver gone with no damage dealt in return. The only other combat is the Warbikes and the Chaplain here, however no damage on either side, so the Chaplain remains on 2 wounds. So that's the end of the fight phase. No morale to speak of, no major losses on either side. The only one really we need to do, I think, is probably the Reavers just here. So they lost 1 man, and that's a 5, so they're good. As do the Terminators as well, they lost 1 man. Yeah, 4, so they're good too. Okay, so that's the end of Orcs' turn. Moving into Space Marines. This is turn 4. At the end of Space Marines movement for turn 4, we've moved this tactical squad into easy charge range of this war boss, just to give the Lieutenant and the Rhino some support. This Rhino has moved forward on the very right hand flank, just to try and close down the Orcs deployment zone a little bit. Nothing going on here, but the Librarian has moved forwards to get into charge range to support and try and get rid of this boy squad once and for all. We've got the tac squad in the centre here who've moved forwards to try and get into more sort of shooting contact for the Catarach and the shock attack gun. This Rhino has just moved forwards just to again get a line of sight on the shock attack gun. And finally Librarian's just turned and moved to get into easy charge range of this combat to give the Chaplain some support, and Dreadnought has just skipped over this barricade just to get a little bit closer to the Catarach. So that's it for movement for the Space Marines. We're now looking at psychic. That was a pretty kind of disastrous psychic phase. So on the good side, this Librarian has done 2 successful smites, 1 on an 8 and 1 on a 9, and taken out 4 of the boys from this squad, so that's whittled them down quite a lot. However, on the negative side, the Primaris Librarian managed to perils on a double 6. Basically failed the roll, did D6 mortal wounds. The 2 standard Warbikers and the Chaplain basically took all of the damage, so there's 1 Warbiker left there. However, the Chaplain and the Librarian are now gone, so this Warbike hopefully will be able to pick off in the shooting phase, but the way these guys have been shooting recently, not that likely. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, so that's it for psychic. So moving on to the shooting. So into the Space Marine shooting phase for turn 4. The killer can is gone, taken out by las cannon fire from the Dreadnought. Didn't explode, but the shock attack gun was outside of 3 inches anyway. 1 Warbike left, as we know, but no damage from any of these units here. Pretty ineffective, to be honest. Similarly, the snipers tried to take out the Warbike, did no damage whatsoever. So that's it for the shooting phase for the Space Marines. I think, pretty sure there's nothing else to shoot. This guy can't see anything anyway. So we are now moving into charges for Space Marines. Very easy and quick charge phase. Librarian is in to this combat. Space Marines here have charged into the back of the war boss, and then we've just piled in this area here. So that's it for the charges. So fight phase for Space Marines coming up next. So at the end of the Space Marines fight phase, down here, a lot of boys gone from this squad. There's literally the boss and 1 with a Decker gun left. The Librarian did a huge amount of damage, as did the Power Fist for a change on the Terminator. We've got the Rhino gone from here, didn't explode. Little damage on either side, but the war boss is down to 2 wounds. Gurgal is gone, so slay the Warlord to the Space Marines, and these guys have just consolidated forwards. And that is it. That's the end of the fight phase. So actually looking a lot more positive for the Space Marines. That's the end of turn 4. So we're moving into turn 5 for the Orcs next. Right, so we're moving into Orcs turn number 5. Now, at the moment, 2 boys left in this squad here. The War Boss left on his own, facing down these Space Marines here. 2 knobs left facing 1 Sergeant Reaver here. The shock attack gun remains on the Space Marines' left flank. And the only bit of movement we've got this turn, which was the last Warbiker, the boss, who has moved around this building to get into charge range of this group of Space Marines. And that is it. So we're just going to roll to see what comes back onto the table. This is a crucial roll for the Orcs. They've got a lot of units which potentially can come back on this turn, which could cause the Space Marines some real problems. So we're going to roll those in now. So we have got a 5-man knob squad that's coming back in. Let's put that up there to remind me. We've added in 10 Gretchen. They're not coming in. 1 Kilocan is coming in. Second Kilocan is not coming in. We've got the Pain Boy is coming back in. Gurgal, who's gone off to have his wounds stitched, he's not coming back in, so he's obviously not up to it at the moment. Another 5-man knob squad is back in. 20-man boys squad is back in. Okay, so that's all the re-rolls done. I think, let me just double check. Yeah, all the re-rolls now done. So I'll get those units back on the table and then we'll see where. Okay, well that was quite stressful. The Orc 20-man boy squad has had to deploy right in this corner, 9 inches away from that Rhino. 9 inches away from the Librarian. It's too big a group to fit in anywhere else. Kilocan is here, again 9 inches to the Librarian, 9 inches to the Rhino. And the 2 5-man knob squads and the Pain Boy are right over here on the right flank, again 9 inches away from that squad, right on the edge of deployment, 9 inches away from this Reaver. So yeah, not a particularly brilliant setup. The Space Marines have done pretty well in closing down this deployment area. They've also, I think, got line breaker as well. So having 1, 2, 3 and 4 units in the enemy deployment zone. So yeah, looks like the Space Marines are inching ahead slowly but surely. So let's move into the Orcs. It will be shooting next because there is no psychic phase as they have no command points left. So that's the end of the Orcs shooting phase. Starting on this side, there are I think 12 or 13 boys in range of the Rhino, shooting on ballistic skill of 5. They got 1 hit with a Daka, but failed to wound. No shooting here, obviously. Kilocan here with its Daka gun, attempted to shoot at the tac squad just over here, but missed. Probably could have gone for the Rhino, but I figured the tac squad would be easier to kill. But as I say, it didn't cause any hits. The Warbiker failed to hit as well, and he's literally 4 or 5 inches away. Shock attack gun was the big success of the turn. Scored 3 wounds on the Dreadnought, which was on 3 wounds, so obviously knocked that one out. Didn't explode, but it wouldn't have mattered even if he did. So yeah, so that's the end of Orc shooting. Can move into the Orc charge phase next. End of the charge phase for the Orcs, and haven't done anything here, basically because this is an 11-inch charge. So we're going to try that anyway, because actually, oh, excuse my finger, they get to re-roll their charges anyway. So they'd actually only need to roll a 9 to get that charge. So, would you look at that? Successful charge. Okay, we're going to do the Overwatch. So that's 4 shots from the Rhino. 1 hit, strength 4, toughness 4, no wounds. Okay, so the Orcs, just move that over, are in, not that there's much room for them. So we're basically going to have to, let's get him in. So what we will do is pop one of these out, drop him in so that he's in the 2nd rank, and then the rest of these can just fall in behind like so. So yeah, that's a little bit of a tight corridor, but we've got the power claw up front, which should do some damage. So good successful charge there from the Orcs. And the other one is the War Boss, who's charged into the Space Marine squad, and I've just piled them in as you would do, just to make it easier for the next round. So that's all the charges done. The Orcs over this side have nothing to charge into, and we've also got this combat going on here, which again, there's nothing that can charge. So just going to finally, one more thing, just measure. Yeah, so we could declare a charge on the killer can into the Librarian as well. Let's roll a 10. Librarian can't fire Overwatch because he is in combat. Get to re-roll, so here we go. Okay, failed anyway. So the killer can is not in combat. So that's the end of the charge phase for the Orcs. Moving into the fight phase. So fight phase is over. The boys on this side managed to take a wound off the Rhino, but lost one of their number in the process. This boys' squad has finally been defeated. Librarian and 1 Terminator Sergeant remaining, who have consolidated towards the flank of the boys. Warbiker remains on 1 wound, having saved 1 wound on a command point reroll using the last command point, otherwise he would be off the table. And then over the back here we've got 2 wounds left on the Sergeant and 3 wounds left in the Knob squad, so they've passed morale, no issues there. So that's it for the Orcs for Term 5, so we're moving into Space Marines Term 5 next. So movement phase for the Space Marines for Term 5 is over. This Rhino has moved into easy charge range of the killer can. Try and tie that up for the next turn. The Librarian and the remaining Terminator are moving into the flank of the boys here, just getting ready to charge next turn. Sorry, next phase. And we've got movement here for these 3 Space Marine units just towards the War Boss, just to try and finally get him down to 0 wounds. Everything else has stayed where it is. So that's it. We're going to look at the psychic phase for Space Marines. Psychic phase over. Librarian cast Smite on this unit of boys, caused 3 mortal wounds, so knocked out 3 more, and then cast Smite again on a +1 and rolled for D3 mortal wounds again, and only got 1, so that's 4 boys gone from this squad. So now looking at the shooting phase for Space Marines. It's the end of the shooting phase for the Space Marines. So the Librarian tried to shoot at the killer can with his Storm Bolter and failed to wound. However, the the Rhino took off 3 wounds. So killer can down to 2 wounds, and then the Hellblasters over here managed to take out 2 of this Knob squad. No other damage from the las cannons or the heavy bolter in the other Devastator squad. And again, apologies for the whistling wind. That pipe needs taping up, and I will do that when I get a chance. So that's it for the shooting phase. We're now looking at the charge phase for Space Marines. Charge phase complete. Rhino's in. No damage from Overwatch on the killer can. The Librarian and the last Terminator are in, and the Dreadnought and Primaris he's a Primaris Sergeant, and the Captain in Gravis armour have made it into the much beleaguered War Boss, who's now down to 1 wound. So that's it for charges. Moving into the fight phase for the Space Marines. Right, so that's the end of the Space Marines fight phase. The Reaver Sergeant has managed to take out 1 more knob, so there's 1 wound left on this final knob on the flank. No damage on either side from these two, so that's a bit of a stalemate. Another couple of boys gone from this squad, however the Rhino's now down to 5 wounds. War Boss has been taken out, last wound dealt by the Primaris Lieutenant, and then the Warbiker, the Lonely Warbiker boss, has been dispatched by the chainsword on the Sergeant. So that's the end of Space Marines turn 5. Moving into the Orcs, turn number 6. So we're just going to roll to see if the game continues. So on a 3+, we go into turn 6. And there you go. So we're moving into turn 6 for the Orcs. Right, so same deal as before. 9 inches from the Rhino takes us to here. 9 inches from the tac squad takes us to here. 9 inches from the Reaver takes us to here, and then 9 inches from the Rhino takes us to here. So we've got this band running through, gets wider here up to this point. That's the space that we have to deploy those 2 units. So I think we're going to drop the boys in right there, striking distance of the tactical squad, and probably drop the boss in, Gurgal in over here to take the objective. So we'll get those on the table and then come back. Okay, so we've got those units on the board. Boy squad has just dropped in here, so that's all good. And what we've done is we've changed where we put Gurgal. We were going to drop him here on this objective, but actually we've put him in over on this flank, just to support this side a little bit. So yeah, and if he can stay with these knob squads, we may get some good advance and charge options in the next turn. So that's the plan. Let's move on to the shooting phase for the Orcs. Right, Orc shooting all complete. 5 of these knobs were able to shoot at the tactical squad just over here. However, although they inflicted hits, didn't actually do any wounds. The big gun on the War Boss Gurgal, which is called a twin big shooter, took a wound off one of the Hellblasters. Not great, but it's a start. And then over this side, the Daka gun in the boy squad managed to take a wound off the standard tactical sergeant. So that's it for shooting for Orcs. Moving into charges next. Okay, so only 1 charge, which was from the 4-man knob squad, which was just here because they were within aura range of Gurgal. We've managed to get an 11-inch charge off, there it is, into the tactical Space Marines. They scored no hits on Overwatch, so they are in quite a lot of trouble, I'd say. So that's it for the charge phase. Looking at fight phase next. So the fight phase for the Orcs in turn 6 ends with 5 more boys gone from this squad, and the Terminator Sergeant 1 wound down, with the Rhino taking an additional wound. And then over in the centre we've got 1 Space Marine down with 1 wound on one of the knobs. And just going to resolve this combat at the back here, and then that's all done. No, it's not, because we've got to do this one as well. So we'll do this one and then the Rhino and Killer Can, and then we'll come back to you. There we go. That's the end. That's the end of Orc turn 6. Again, no damage on either side here. However, the Reaver Sergeant has been victorious, but it has cost him dearly. So yeah, we're looking at the morale for the Orcs. I don't think we've got any. Nothing in the middle there. Nothing to be worried about. Nothing over the side here. Nothing here. These guys are still, there's still enough unit models in that unit to pass. So that is the end of Orcs turn 6, moving into Space Marines turn 6 next. End of the shooting phase for the Space Marines for turn 6. The Reaver Sergeant managed to hit but not wound the shock attack gun. Gurgale's down to 1 wound, down to overwhelming firepower from the Hellblasters and Devastators up on the far left of the Space Marine flank. Over on this side, the Dreadnought and the bolt rifles of the Lieutenant and Sergeant have taken out around 8 or 9 of these boys. So that's depleted that squad quite a bit. That's the end of shooting. I do apologise, no it's not. There was a few shots coming in from long range of the Devastators over on the back there. They did manage to take out, I believe, 1 of the boys from this squad as well. So that's it for shooting. Now going into the charge phase for Space Marines. So over on this side, an easy charge for the Librarian and the Terminator. Those are now into the back of the boys. Over on this flank, the Reaver, who was attempting to charge the shock attack gun, got taken out by 4 strength 8 hits at -5 AP, which caused a huge amount of damage, which he just couldn't survive. So he's just exploded into a big red mist of gore. So that's the end of the charge phase. We're now moving into the fight phase for Space Marines. Right, so end of the fight phase. The boys are really down to their bare minimum now, so they're down to 4 here. Rhino's on 2 wounds, excuse me, so getting close to its limit in terms of damage it can take. The Rhino here is down to 8 wounds, no damage to the killer can. 1 knob gone from this squad, but miraculously no damage suffered by the Space Marines. So not too shabby at all from them. They seem to be holding up well. That's it for combat. So that's the end of the fight phase, end of turn 6 overall. So we're moving into turn 7 potentially, but I just need to roll and see whether that is the case. And then we'll come back to you. Right, so we've just rolled a 1, which means that that is the end of the battle. So in terms of victory conditions, we've got the superior objective, which is held by the Space Marines. The Space Marines do not hold any other objectives currently, because I believe that this one at the end... Oh, I tell a lie, from the centre. Yeah, so they hold this one as well. That is 3 inches from the centre. So we've got objective number 1, the superior objective held by Space Marines. Space Marines have also got Slay the Warlord, First Strike and Line Breaker. So that looks like a pretty resounding win for the Space Marines, which makes a difference because the last 2 battles, you probably know they've been beaten quite soundly. So, so quite a good result for them. That is the end of this battle, so it's a win to the Space Marines. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Scenario 4, which is coming up soon.